This morning, but my name is Travis Knudsen. I'm the executive director here for the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency, and I'm really appreciative and thankful for everybody's time and volunteerism to be here today. So thank you so much.
And I'm Christina Ward. I'm our finance manager.
I'm Howard Saxon. I'm chair of the LRAPA board, and I'm a City of Eugene appointee. And I'd like to thank the people on the budget committee for volunteering. It is very much appreciative. And I know all of you are very busy in your other lives. So I definitely appreciate you taking time to help us as a board through a very important budget process that we have to go through every year. So.
Hi, I'm Michael Johnston. I'm also a City of Eugene appointee, and I echo everything Howard just said.
I'm Amanda Dellinger. It's nice to meet everybody. I'm the Community Relations Director at Square One Villages, and I learned about LRAPA at my previous job and had visited, and so I know a lot about the organization, and I'm excited to be involved at a new level. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Steve Schmunk, Budget Committee. This is my third year, I believe. So I appreciate everybody's service.
I'm Lance Giles. I'm the Technical Services Manager here at LRAPA.
Rochelle Nicholas, Administrative Manager at LRAPA.
David Lovell, Lane County Commissioner, District 2, Springfield, finest town in Lane County. Thank you very much. And my salute to those who are volunteering their time to do numbers. Anybody that puts numbers on a page where I can understand them is an angel in my book. So I appreciate that very much.
Zach Mulholland's my first meeting on the budget committee. Thanks for having me here.
Ruth Linos, I'm the Springfield representative.
Heather Gravel, Administrative Assistant, Adam.
I think so.
How about Dylan?
Hey everybody, Dylan Plummer. I'm the Eugene, or one of the Eugene appointed members of the board for LRAPA, and happy to be here.
We still don't have a quorum, do we?
We still don't have a quorum. So one of
Wait, here we go. Who just walked by? Oh, that's I got excited because I saw.
We could do a temporary appointment.
Yeah. Text or call anyone.
well, I know that Brian Cutchin is on his way, which I assume probably with Thaddeus as well, because they're both coming down from Oak Ridge. So my assumption is that they're driving, but Brian did say he's going to be about 10 to 15 minutes behind today for the budget committee meeting. So we are close to that point. Yeah, the item that we will begin is with the board briefly taking sections so we can appoint Amanda to the budget committee meeting, and then the board will recess that meeting so we can begin the budget committee meeting in full. We could probably, in an informal basis, start off on the budget presentation. We won't be able to do things like elect the chair and the vice chair for the budget committee because that's an action and we will need that quorum.
Well, I would, I'd like
Just
to
wait.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's best.
I don't want to. I think our new budget member and Brian wants to be in on the discussion. So
we do have we will be providing lunch today as well. We have Covert Pizza coming, which a little bit closer to lunchtime we will set up. So the budget committee and the board meeting or board members, please help yourself when those arrive here later this morning. And we're just again thankful for the time and effort. We thought the least we could do is provide lunch for everybody.
And just so everyone knows, a housekeeping item, the bathrooms are just right there. If you just at the end of where the cubicles are right there. So if you need to use those.
Adam Rue just came in.
Oh, there's Adam. Hi, Adam. We went through introductions. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I had some technical issues on my end. And sorry I couldn't make it in person, but I'm Adam Rue. I've been on the budget committee for a while, and I appreciate the chance to serve again. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Adam, we're just waiting. We don't have a quorum of the board yet, so we haven't officially started the meeting yet. So we're just in a holding pattern for a few minutes.
Okay, thanks.
And Alan Stout did indicate that he'll be joining us virtually today. So at some point we may see him pop on as well, but he hasn't plugged in yet. He's up in Portland and will be on his way down from the north and joining us virtually.
So for some of you new folks, this is our first board meeting in the new space. It was an old building. Was it a SEC?
It was a Selco Community Credit Union until the late nineties when LRAPA purchased it then. The far extended area, we call that kind of the annex, that was added on after LRAPA purchased it. We had Lane Community College, a group of students in a program, they had added that extension to it. And then we didn't really adjust or change anything to the office since then. So we had some kind of turquoise colored carpet. This space was like this was Max's office, this corner here. We had some cubicles there. And then on the other side of that partition is where the board room, meeting room / break room was. And so having this facility to function in our needs is quite a nice change, and I'm really grateful for the board's agreement in that need and then the approval for us to move forward with it. Proper Built was the general contractor who were awarded the bid to do this work, and it's been great working with Proper Built. And Brad has been very communicative and responsive to us and our needs, and which when we get to the board meeting here later, the budget for this capital improvement project is like, was it 2% over the bid? 1.8%. So we were behind from the initial plan. We're 10 days slower than thought and 1.8% over that bid. So
That's near perfect.
yeah, I think all around we should be pretty pleased and happy with how things turned out.
And the bid was under what we budgeted for, so we're overall under budget, so that's great.
And so for the new folks, LRAPA had if you will, almost a for-profit enterprise business that they had created these small air quality samplers for particulate matter. And it was a good technology at the time, but technology marched on, and so the technology wasn't quite being kept up to date. And so the board 2 years ago decided it was time to exit that business. And so there was quite a bit of cash in Aerometrics at Enterprise Fund, like 1.2 million or something. And so the board decided once we shut down Aerometrics that we were going to use those funds, and we sold Aerometrics, the inventory and stuff like that for like $25,000. But so we used those funds to pay for the renovation of this building, which had not been renovated. I mean, it was like 30 plus years since anything had done to it. And you can imagine, it was just old, and the HVAC system was old, and lighting was terrible, and it wasn't very well laid out. So it's quite a transformation. And so LRAPA owns the space and debt-free. So long-term investment, I think it was really a smart move.
Absolutely.
Part of the reflection was going into this, do we invest further into this space? Do we maybe sell it and start renting a place? Do we move and buy something else or different? And the decision was that investing into the equity that we already have of this building is the best approach. Oh, there's Thaddeus. Hi, Thaddeus.
Hi, sorry, I was having trouble logging in there.
No worries.
But Thaddeus Carter, I'm Oak Ridge City Council, and also work with Southwest Collaborative Solutions on the Oak Ridge Air side with the home heating upgrades project. So I'm glad to be on the committee and learn what's going on.
Thanks, Thaddeus. We're waiting for one more board member to join us. I think Brian's just a few minutes out, and then we will be able to have quorum to get going.
Okay, sounds good.
We do have something we can share out to. Our plan at the moment with the remodel is to host an open house on May 8th. So May 8th is a board meeting day. It's the second Thursday of May. And the plan, which is tentative, but I think sounds good, and we're probably going to move forward with the two, is after the board finishes, which is 1:30, 2 o'clock or so, we'll have a 2 o'clock start time to that open house. for the board, of course, anybody else, the budget committee, if you're interested. Our regulated business partners will be invited, community partners, the public. And we're having plans on how we can have that be a real good, successful time for anybody who's here and engaged.
And we might already be here if we do the May meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of why we piggybacked with it, because everyone would already be over here.
Brian's gonna get quite the reception.
Standing ovation.
We'll have a glare at him. And Matt Keating wasn't gonna be able to join today.
I have
hadn't
not
heard
heard
from
from Matt. Let me text him too real quick.
Okay, this is Diane Bernal.
Sorry.
First time I remember, we've kind of struggled to get a quorum.
Yeah.
I just texted Brian and I'm gonna reach out to Matt next.
I hadn't heard from Jared. Did you hear from Jared?
I've not heard from Jerry.
Well, Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday is my 1-year anniversary with LRAPA.
Gosh.
Can't
Wow.
believe it.
This is quick.
I know, it happened quick. In some ways it happened really quick, in other ways it's dragging, but it just depends on what the topic is. But yeah, last year, if you'll remember,
Yes.
you all appointed me as the budget officer before I started,
Before you
without
started,
my
yeah.
knowledge or my consent. But I rolled with the punches. I was, this has been a steep learning curve for me because this is my first government position. I had a 20 years experience in the nonprofit sector, which most of those skills just transferred right over. But there were quite a few things I needed to learn. So when I presented the budget last year, thank goodness I had the support of the whole management team to back me up because I just didn't really know the numbers and the context behind the numbers. I had been here like a week, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whenever we had that meeting. So I wouldn't have known any of the answers to programmatic stuff or, you know, so last year I came into this just really feeling out of my depth and not knowing that you know, what kind of questions you all would have, that kind of thing. But this year I really feel much more solid and I'm looking forward to today's presentation because to compare where I was a year ago to today, I have learned so much. So yeah, this is a lot less daunting this year going around than it was last year for sure.
And I can elaborate on that a little bit, mostly the time, but also I think the context.
You mean you're gonna elaborate a lot?
Well, so I'm new into my role here at LRAPA. I started in 2020 as the public affairs manager. Amid kind of leadership transition, I found myself continuing to take on responsibilities to keep this place functioning and whole, which was well served to me in stepping into the executive director role, which I took last May. But on the finance side of the organization, that was one place where I didn't jump into too fully, partly by intention because numbers can be intimidating to a degree. But Christine and I recognized that some training would be really helpful for us on the budget process. So we went to an Oregon Department of Revenue budget training for us earlier this year. So we feel much more prepared on the work before us, which is making sure that we have a good sound budget to present to you today. So that's my time elaboration. Yes.
Well, and I agree with David that being able to follow through the materials was definitely reflecting what you experienced, you inherited, but you did a great job of just continuing that simplicity. But yet, I didn't find gaps where I'm going, where'd that number come from?
Well, what does that mean? I think in my nonprofit service, I really learned to take, so many people in the nonprofit sector on the boards of directors and things just don't have any finance experience at all. A lot of times you even have a treasurer who was elected as a treasurer but has no finance experience in the nonprofit sector. If any of you have ever served on a nonprofit board, you know what I'm talking about. But so I learned along the way that you really have to just remove all of the lingo, the CPA type lingo that's just unnecessary for comprehending the information. So yeah, I try to do things just in plain terms anytime I can.
And to your credit, we're transitioning to new financial software
Yes.
platform
Oh,
also.
Yeah.
And we all know how smoothly those always go.
Can I ask what nonprofits you were coming from?
Well, I actually was born and raised in Oklahoma. And so I came here to Oregon about 4.5 years ago. So most of my nonprofit service was back in Oklahoma, but I worked for the longest period of time at a hospice home where patients would come live with us in our final days. And so I transitioned from there. I worked for a while at a child abuse prevention agency, and then later on to a basic needs agency. Like we had a food bank, and we had services for people to help them keep their electric on and their heat on, and rent if they were about to get evicted or something for behind rent. We would help people out there too. So that's the bulk of my experience.
Got it, yeah.
Once I came to Oregon, I did work for a short time at the Siuslaw Watershed Council in Mapleton. But that was a part-time position, and so it wasn't sustainable for me with, rent in this area of the world. But so I made my way into Eugene, and right before LRAPA reached out to me to inquire if I might be interested in this position, I was working for MIUSA, Mobility International.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They've been hit really hard with all the grant funding freezes and things from the government side of things. They had several grants that were through USAID. And as you guys I'm sure are aware, that pretty much that whole department was cut. So if they've cut all of USAID, that means that your grant is terminated. So I really feel for them right now. They're really struggling through all these administration changes. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, with a little benefit of a little bit of hindsight, I realized how intimidating of a position we put you in last year, and I'm glad we didn't scare you away. By appointing you and all this stuff before you even officially started.
Yeah, my first day, Susanna said, "Okay, well, you're the budget officer." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Thank you. Yeah, it was very intimidating. My first day was March 18th, and so yeah, it was crazy.
So it'll seem like a cakewalk this year, hopefully.
Well, prepping it was, Susanna had prepped it last year for the most part, and then we tweaked it a little bit. But yeah, prepping it was so much easier this year because I had that context and understanding of each of the programs and stuff. So yeah, much easier this year.
And having, I will say, to Christina's point or appreciation to Christina in terms of helping us from a financial perspective. Come in where we were a little bit of a finance manager route to a degree, and she came in to figure out what was on the floor versus what had been dropped that was being juggled, understanding what those needs were, and then helping to do the juggling better. And I think from a financial perspective, we have a budget that we are much more confident in the numbers behind it and what our actual expenses versus revenue are, having lived in these roles now for almost a year.
I'll let him in right now.
Alan's calling too.
Hi, Alan.
It rains, it pours.
Oh, okay.
we go. Now we have quorum, right?
Yay.
Okay. Right. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Yeah, sorry I'm late.
No problem. You make our quorum, so,
We've been talking about you for 30 minutes.
Do you want to let him introduce himself?
you want to introduce yourself, Brian?
Yeah, sure. For those of you who don't, on the committee who don't know me, Brian Cutchin, Mayor of Oak Ridge.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Glad you can make it. Well, we have now a quorum, so I will now call to order the Board of Directors meeting for a short discussion, and then we will adjourn and we'll have the Budget Committee meeting, which will last until noon, and then at 12:15 we'll reconvene the board. So thanks everybody for your patience. So I'd like to call to order the LRAPA Board of Directors. First item on this part of the agenda is to appoint committee members. And so we have.
Roll call first, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's do a roll call for board members.
Chair Saxon,
Here.
Vice Chair Lovall,
Here.
Director Cutchin,
Here.
Director Hensley, Director Keating, Director Johnston,
Here.
Director Plummer,
Here.
Director Settlemeyer, Director Stout.
Okay. All right, we have a quorum. Okay, thank you. So we need to, as a board, appoint members to the budget committee for this budget cycle, and those are.
That is Amanda Dellinger, and I'll pass to Mike. Do you want to?
Chair, I move that we appoint Amanda Dellinger to the to the Budget Committee.
Second.
There's a second. Any further discussion?
I'll just say Amanda's a colleague of mine and is great and would be a great addition to the Budget Committee.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, any
Third time here.
other further discussion? If not, all in favor of appointing Amanda to the budget committee, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. I think that ends this part of the board meeting, so we will now recess the LRAPA board meeting until 12:15. And so we are adjourned. And then I'd like to now call to order the budget committee. So I guess, do I chair that?
So the chair is Steve is chair,
Okay.
and then Ruth is vice chair.
All right.
So pass that gavel.
I think it's the other way
Or
around.
is it? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My apologies.
So straight, Ruth.
We didn't tell you. Go ahead.
So I'll bring to order the Budget Committee meeting and welcome
Thank you.
Amanda. Glad to have you on board. And so I'll open for nominations for chair. Would be interested. I'm okay with continuing, but
I'll move
anybody?
that we reappoint Ruth.
Okay,
I'll
we have a motion.
Second.
Seconded by
3
David.
seconds.
Quick before she
Any
takes it back.
discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, I'll be chair. And do I do the vice chair? Okay, so we have Steve as the current vice chair. Is anyone interested in that position? Would like to, okay, I'll entertain a
Hopefully
motion.
Steve still is, right?
Are you okay with
Well, I
continuing?
will, I believe I'll have to be remote, probably no visual on the 10th. But other than that, it's fine.
Okay, so we have Steve, who, anybody want to nominate?
I move that we nominate Steve as
Okay.
Vice Chair.
Second.
Second by David. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Steve.
both.
Okay, so now we'll do the proposed budget presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let's see, Heather, do you want to pull that presentation up?
Well, before we get started, I was going to say that there's gonna be a little game today. That there's one typo in the budget book, and if you could find
found
it,
it.
well, you might have found another one, I don't know, but then I discovered there's actually 4 typos. Of the game, I'm just gonna tell you about the typos. So on the website, there is a revised version of the proposed budget book. But we didn't reprint them as the revised version because we'd already printed all of these out and they were not, they were just typos and paragraphs and not anything to do with the numbers on the budget. So we just made the decision to save the paper and I would just tell you what those were as we got to them. Throughout the book, there are references to the Citizens Advisory Committee. And we were in several places calling it the Citizen Advisory Committee without a S, so I added the S throughout, so it's really Citizens Advisory Committee. There's several spots throughout the book that that's the case. On page 8, if you'll just go there really quick before we get into the full-time equivalent employees table, the first table that's showing it by department. The administration for the year 25-26 should be 5 FTEs and operations should be 9. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but I just want to get your copies up to speed. And then on page 17, this is just a wording issue. We call it open burning on page 17, and it really more accurately should be outdoor burning. And so that's, let's see, where is that? I don't remember where it is.
Permits and fees.
Okay, permits and fees, yeah, it should be instead of open burning in the second line at the end of the line, it should be outdoor burning.
Okay.
And then the last thing is on page 19. Under the two, let's see, changes from, no. Let me see where it is. Okay, down in the last paragraph under general fund staffing. It says that we shifted 2 FTEs to operations, but that should actually be a 3.
Oh.
So that's why we didn't reprint, because none of it had to do with the actual budget numbers. It was just some of the context behind it and typos stuff. So there's no game. Did you find a different typo?
I did just in circled it. Where is that? It's just a word. Revenue was misspelled.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's embarrassing. Well, we'll look for it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so now that everybody is up to speed on all of my typos that we know of, we can get started.
Yeah.
So I'll let you start.
Awesome, thank you. For those who are online, if you want to just unmute and voice up, that'll be easy for us in terms of our presentation, but a little bit harder to see. And Heather, could you minimize just that there as because there will be some content that will be covered by that.
There you go.
Yes, thank you, perfect. Also, I think that what can be healthy is if there are questions, we can collect those, and then at the end of the presentation, especially noting time, getting through all the information we have to share, and then we can engage in discussion, I think might be an effective prompt way for us to move through that. But if something is jumping out at you, absolutely, we'll entertain that. But I think for efficiency, some of the questions after the presentation can be helped. Welcome to this fiscal year presentation for fiscal year 2025-2026. I'm Travis Knutson, the Executive Director. Our budget officer is Christina Ward. Could you click on the actual presentation though, Heather? Just so it gets the.
Let me.
Just click on the screen.
Yeah.
Click right there. Thank you.
Okay.
That's good. You're good. History that LRAPA has done since even before I have been here is any questions that we have that we're unable to engage on during our conversation, we'll write them down, and then not tomorrow, but the following Friday, follow up with those questions in writing. That has been a successful approach that we've used in years past, and so we'll continue with that effort for this year. So vision into action for 2025 to 2026. So a good budget takes all of our allocated resources and utilizes them as effectively as we can with the point of meeting our mission, which is monitoring for air quality, implementing programs to protect and improve air quality. A big part of what we do is through issuing permits and implementing programs that work to maintain and continuously improve. We do a lot of engaging the community from there's a public health component to our mission, which is where a lot of that public education comes from. air quality is really important to be good and keeping us healthy. And so part of our mission is helping the community understand that as well. And for us, investing in technologies, upgrades, and staff training is how we will be able to be really successful for the long term. And I think that the budget that we present to you accounts for a lot of those investments in training and then other resources that we have here or need here at the organization. So maybe I'll pass this one to Christine to start off on.
And back by popular demand, in the middle at the bottom, you'll see the page number of what we're referencing on the slide that we're on. We tried to do it kind of in order so you won't have to flip back and forth too much, but the budget overview is actually about the budget message from Travis and I is on page 5, and it kind of highlights the same information that we're about to cover here. So the total proposed expenditures budget is 7.6 million, and that is the consolidated number for all of our funds. So that's not just the general fund. And then the general fund expenditures portion of that is 3.5 million. And then that last little note is just talking about the budget law that applies to us. We learned during our training this year that we are not subject to the full budget law because we are a special type of agency. We are a Council of Governments agency, which means several other governments came together to form us, and we stay together because of those intergovernmental agreements. And so that's sort of what got us to be in that category. And that is good because we have a little bit less rules that we have to be subject to. For instance, we don't have to file our approved budget with the Department of Revenue, whereas other agencies who are have the whole budget law applied to them do have to do that. So there's just a few tasks we don't have to complete because we are in that Council of Governments area. But some things we will choose to continue even if we're not compelled to have to do. Like we now, for instance, we only have to give like a 2-week notice of this meeting, but we follow our procedure of making the announcement the month before, just because, so we're exceeding the expectations of what we need to do for the budget law.
So this next slide is a breakdown of what our full-time equivalent is. This first chart divides that up by our funds. We have our general fund, which is, of course, supports most of our personnel and our expenditures. There's also a special revenue fund, which we will more informally refer to as our Title V fund. So under the Clean Air Act, there's a program called the Title V program, and that's for regulating basically any business that's emissions are above a certain threshold set by the EPA. And so these are larger, more complicated permits. But under the Clean Air Act, it says this program has to pay for itself. So from a government perspective, we have its own fund that we bill to for our Title V work that we do. There's also a grant fund. We have federal grants. We also have state grants. And so that is our breakdown of FTE allocated to our grant fund. That same FTE breakdown on our operational or I guess you could say departmental distribution. So 5 in administration for the proposed year, operations 9, which is a +3 from last year of 6, finance remaining at 3 FTE, and technical services at 4. At 3, excuse me, was at 4, but now down to 3. Some of the changes that we can describe here just kind of in context. So last year we had our field staff, so our inspectors, who were under the technical services, the monitoring side of the department. More recently, we have moved those individuals as well as a permit coordinator under operations, as where the work of issuing a permit is we have permit writers who on one side of the coin write the regulations or look at the regulations, write the permit conditions that say, follow these rules or these conditions and you'll be meeting all the regulations. And then the inspection side, the other side of that coin, is how is that applicable at the actual location in the facility itself, and that's where the inspections come. And those two sides to the same coin, and having all of those entities united under the same department is a better, more complete work group. So our permits can be more environmentally sound and more directly applicable to the business that we're regulating through our permits.
Do you want to talk about the increase?
Oh, and one thing, yes, thank you. We do have in this budget is, you'll notice the 19 to 20 FTE, a proposal bring for the budget committee is the addition of that FTE, taking on what I would call kind of a bit of a smoke management role. This is designed to assure that our services we're offering are maintained or expanded on. One of those is complaint response. So if someone has an outdoor burn complaint, a neighbor is creating a lot of smoke, having more capacity to respond to those items, more capacity to engage during wildfire season on our messaging, where the smoke's going, what is it doing on our prescribed burns. So Rivers to Ridges is a local group in Lane County that's a contingent of a bunch of different organizations that work together to do prescribed burning. And with wildfires becoming more and more of a concern, prescribed burning is looking to be a toolbox, a tool in the toolbox that'll be utilized more. If we have this resource, that'll be more opportunity to engage with those prescribed burners on a do it on this day because the wind is blowing in that direction and it's not going to move into town, but don't do it on this day because if you do, it's going to go right into town and people are going to breathe that. So this is a resource that provides us more opportunity to engage in that space, provide better service in Holtz, Lane County. And another important component to this is it being in technical services, is we have a number of staff who have been with the organization for many, many years, 30 plus years. And this is recognizing that from a succession planning perspective, someone who can start to take in ideas and responsibilities and content and work that's being done. So that way, when in time we do see retirements take place, we can be better aimed to make sure that all of those responsibilities are being met and maintained.
All right, now we're gonna go ahead to page 15, which I will mention on page 13, it describes this Council of Governments and the requirements that we have for the budget law. If you're interested in diving deeper in that, there is information on page 13 about that. So we're gonna forge right ahead to talk about the revenue sources. So the majority of our revenue is coming from intergovernmental agreements. That would be our grants with the EPA and DEQ and yeah, that's it. And so what I wanted to make sure and let you know is though, this is consolidated. This is for all of our funds, what you see up here. So of that 63%, 46% of the pie is actually in our grant fund. So that's dollars in, dollars out, like it's paying for those grant programs to happen. The rest of it, which would be whatever 63 minus 14 is the part that's for the general fund. So I just wanted to it kind of skews it, makes it look like we have a whole lot more grant funding supporting our day-to-day operations than we do in reality based on this graph. And then 31% of our funding comes from permits and fees. So anytime we create or modify a permit for one of our sources, we have fees that are associated with that, and that helps with our revenue.
There's annual fees associated with that too. And I'll say that most of the grant work that we have, intergovernmental grants, are our two targeted airshed grant and a new environmental justice government grant, which in total is about $9 million worth over the life of all of these grants. And that's particularly to do home interventions in Oak Ridge to provide ductless heat pumps, so not as much wood stoves need to be used to heat people's homes, as well as on the EJ government to government grant, provide more interventions on homes so they can be smoke proof and keep that air quality out during wildfire season, and also some minor renovations to help homes be less likely to ignite if there is a nearby fire from a local wildfire.
So our consolidated total is 7.1 million for this year. And 3% of that comes from our local partner support. So the cities and Lane County, the cities that are part of our organization in Lane County all pay annual partner dues. And that helps us with our revenue, but it also helps us leverage that funding for our grant from the EPA. That is our 105, section 105 base grant. They require a maintenance of effort. And so they require that we show that the community is supporting our work so that they will support our work. And every year we need to spend the same amount or $1 more in order to keep that funding stream going. So if you're spending more, you got to bring in more too, right? So anyways, that's all to say that our local partner support, although it's only 3% of our overall consolidated revenue, it is a really important 3%.
Yeah, that section 105 base grant is non-competitive dollars that we get because we implement the Clean Air Act in Lake County. So we don't have to put in a grant request every so often. Well, we kind of do have to put an application, but it's non-competitive. And part of that process is we have to keep track of these are federal dollars that we're spending and these are non-federal dollars that we're spending. And of the non-federal dollars, we have to meet a mark, which is about $1.4 million to receive our $300,000 a year non-competitive dollar support. And that local partner support is really vital in helping us clear that hurdle so we can still have access to those non-competitive dollars. Why don't you keep going?
All right, so this is consolidated again across all our funds. The expenditures will be in the proposed budget are for 7.6 million. 54% of that is materials and services, but in the pie chart in the red area, 44% of that is directly related to those tag 1, tag 2, and EJ grants that we were talking about. So that's dollars in and dollars out. It's not supporting our day-to-day operations here at LRAPA. So the real largest expenditure item would be personnel if you take out the grant consideration. And personnel is 38% of our expenditures. That includes salaries and benefits. Anything else you wanted to say on that?
I think that's, and that 38% does in this proposed budget include that 20th.
And then we're going to start diving into specifically each fund. So that will start on page 18 with the narrative about the general fund. I wanted to talk a little bit about the changes from previous years section on page 19. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that this year our PERS rate is going up by 2%. So every 2 years, we will see an increase of 2% employer match for PERS. So just wanted to make sure you knew that that was kind of a trajectory that's going to be happening. So the fiscal year 26 will be a 2% increase over the previous year. And
I think for some operational highlights of work that we have done over the year of 2024. So we manage about 288 air contaminant discharge permits, kind of a flexible number because sometimes permits are going away, sometimes permits are coming in. That doesn't count our what is about 15 Title V permits. In 2024, we received 241 asbestos notices saying asbestos work was being done in the county. Those are work that we inspect as part of our service that we offer to Lane County. And we processed 601 community complaints. So something that LRAPA brings to Lane County as a service that is, I think, expanded upon what DEQ outside of Lane County offers is that added complaint response process.
Before we go on, it didn't, we probably should have included on the slides the portion of the general fund the expenses for the general fund total, which just wasn't up there. It'll be on page 22. The total expenditures are proposed at 3.587 million. And it did say that projection for the ending fund balance for the general fund will be at the end of the year would be 1.6 million. Of course, that would be adjusted between now and then to reflect the actuals from our current year. This is just based on estimates right now. So, and that's typical. We won't know till the end of the year we're in what the beginning balance for next year will be.
Well, and you've started a contingency fund this year.
We've always had a contingency, and it's not really a separate fund. Some agencies actually have a separate fund for their contingency. We just have it as a line item on the budget. It's 117,000. The reason it looks like it's new is because each of the prior years, we did a supplemental budget to move the contingency up into other line items. So there was originally contingencies in previous years, but because we didn't spend it because we didn't leave it in the contingency by the end of that fiscal year, it's not showing on previous years. So it looks like it's new, but it's just because the way that it works when you do your actuals, if you didn't spend it, it disappears.
I would suspect you'll be in 1% because you tend to be in 1% with everything that we do.
That's the goal anyway.
Yeah. We did leave a contingency a PERS contingency as well, but previously we were putting that at 30,000 and we've just not needed to tap into it, so I reduced it to 10,000 this year.
Works.
So now we're ready to move on.
Click on just the present. Oh wait, no, there goes.
Oh.
For some reason, you want to go. So I'll kind of start this one out, those get to the numbers. So as I mentioned before, we have a Title V fund, a special revenue fund. So under the Clean Air Act, if you're working on Title V sources, that has to pay for itself, which can be a little bit complicating because Title V permit includes all other applicable permits. So all the state permits and requirements are also embedded in that Title V work. So if you're working on a Title V source, how much of that is exclusively Title V and how much of that is general fund? That is the one of the, I think, components of the Title V fund or process that can be a little bit challenging or tricky. But for this self-sustaining fund, 770,000 and its numbers. So I'll pass it to you.
Okay. So the 770,000 is the estimated revenue that we would have coming in next year. Our actual for this year was higher than that. Our actual for this year ended up being 793. So it is possible that we would bring in more than the 770. It's just an estimate for now on the revenue side. But we don't have to do supplemental budgets to increase revenue. Revenue numbers you don't have to do supplemental budgets for. You can just do the actuals. The only thing you have to do supplemental budgets for are the expenses. Let's see, over the last few years, there were some pretty big rate increases. We followed suit with DEQ's increases. In 23-24, there was a 43% increase in the Title V fees. And then last year, or the year we're in right now, there was a 40% increase, which seems like really high increases, and it is, but it's because they went several years, more than a decade, I believe.
It's 2011.
Without having any rate increases. So they really were making up for the past, 15 years, getting us where we should be. There was some speculation on our board that maybe that was too high of a jump for us, but as we were working through the budget process, we have determined that whereas a few years ago, this fund was not really self-sustaining, it was costing us more to operate than what we were bringing in, and now it has stabilized. So we through this proposed budget are maintaining a 4-month reserve for that fund as well, and we've gotten better, more accurate at doing our inter-fund transfers from the Title V to the general fund related to overhead expenses like office space and utilities and phones and things like that, where we've really honed in the allocation for those things. So whereas before when it was struggling, we were not transferring over the amount that it really was costing us to run the program, we were transferring over much less. Now we're able, with the increased fees, to actually transfer over the amount that it is costing us.
And those are statutory fees enacted by the Oregon legislature, not DEQ.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. That was what my comment was about to be. And in LRAPA's fee structure for our state fees, we have our own fee structure that we follow that is different from DEQ. DEQ's approach is usually many years with large steps. Ours is more every year, just a smaller step in time. When it comes to the Title V fund, what Howard said is it is set by the Oregon legislature as opposed to DEQ's EQC, the Environmental Quality Commission, which is DEQ's version of the board. Or for us, we don't set our Title V fees. We follow what the Oregon legislature says.
Thank you, guys.
So do you think that we'd expect another 10 years of not ripping the Band-Aid off and then another rip of the Band-Aid based on what happened?
DEQ's trying to change that approach. They did look to try to take the legislative authority on those fees and pass it to the EQC in the last long session, and they were unsuccessful in doing that. And I am not aware of any effort in this long session to try to take that same approach. So that being said, considering the history and not seeing any change to today, I would anticipate that we may find ourselves in a similar circumstance in the future. Thanks.
We have already talked a little bit about the types of grants we have in the grant.
Yeah, so maybe we kind of click along through
Yeah.
this one a little bit more. Will you click on the presentation?
I think it was
Okay. We're close.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll move through these. So a lot of our grants are up in Oak Ridge based. Our targeted airshed grant 1 and 2, and then our environmental justice government to government grant for about $1 million. That spending there of the 3.3 is what we expect will be utilized over the next fiscal year. Kind of moving on through the grants to here for the sake of time. Something that is included in this budget that's worth pointing out is from a capital overlay expenses. So we are planning to invest about 280 in infrastructure and technology, and part of that also includes a fleet vehicle replacement. We have 5 vehicles in our fleet, and one of those is about a decade old and over 100,000 miles. We've been lucky that there has not been any significant maintenance on it yet, but we're eyeing that opportunity and considering bringing for the budget committee an opportunity to replace that fleet in the next fiscal year. Also, part of this investment is a continuation of our technology and database upgrades. We've made good progress on an internal database program called Linfo and receiving some back-end upgrades that will allow us to add more modules to it, like an asbestos module that's in the works, an enforcement module, and other things. It'll be helpful to us being more efficient, but that continues more of that ongoing investment in that technology.
And it is ongoing investment, but it's not a new $100,000 towards that software. We didn't make as much progress this year on the upgrades to that software. So in the current year that we're in, we had 130,000 set aside for that project. We've only really completed about 30,000 of that project. So we will underspend in the current year, and we're shifting that money then to the next year, to the fiscal year 26. So I don't want you guys to think that we invested 130 in the current year, plus we're proposing another 100 next year. It's the same 100, we just didn't get the work completed this year so far.
On that fleet vehicle replacement, are we under any obligation to do a certain type of vehicle, i.e. an EV versus a combustion? Good, thanks.
Can you lease versus capital purchase? Is that an option?
I believe we have that flexibility. Lance, do you have any insight there?
Yeah, I guess we could lease, but usually miles are pretty limited. You pay for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably 2 or 3 times miles a year on this vehicle.
It's definitely more financially conservative to just purchase the vehicle. And that way we have, the asset to offset the expense too. Before we get a financial forecast, I want to mention that on page 30, there is a reflection of our closed Aerometrics fund, but we just have to keep it in the budget book for a few years until we've got zeros all the way across. But there is no activity in that fund because it's been closed.
So on financial forecast, so we have a few assumptions here to go over, assuming that we will see intergovernmental revenue expected to grow at about 4%, permit fees to grow by 4% annually, and local partner dues expected to rise at about 3% yearly as well. Expenditure control, we are projected to rise by 11% in the fiscal year due to COLA increases, as well as the addition of that one FTE. And our expenses on our outgoing or expenditures increasing 4% as well.
And the 11% increase is just in the salaries and benefits area.
There you go. Stable fund balances, we're dipping in 2025 due to capital investments, namely what we just talked about, but still remain strong, and Title V, due to fee increases a few years ago, also stabilized as well. And our reserves will be remaining at 4 months into the next fiscal year for operating expenses. Anyone want to add there?
There's kind of a summary on page 32 of the consolidated ending fund balances for all funds for the projected next few years. You'll see there the last line of that little table says approximate months of reserves on hand. That tells you what the dollar amount would equate to in our average spending.
And then this is kind of the final drive or final slide. I do think that our mission is front and center of what we do, and the finance component of what we do is really how can that facilitate our function and the services that we provide to Lynn County. I do think that this budget is well aligned. I think that we, as we talked about kind of before we began, Christine and I did a lot of going back, making sure we have an understanding from a governmental perspective what our obligations are. Now, living here with this work at our fingertips for almost a year for yourself, we're feeling pretty confident that the numbers you see are representative of LRAPA's reality. And I think that's the last one. Yeah, so we believe that we're on a long-term successful route for our organization.
I just have one more thing to say about the forecasts on page 33 and 34. I only did the forecasts for the general fund and the special revenue fund because the grants fund, the forecast is if we have a grant, it's dollars in, dollars out. If we don't, it's not. So there's really no use forecasting the grants because that's so specific to those earmarked numbers, those designated funds. So I just didn't do a future projection for the grant funds for that reason. When the grants end, they're over. There's just no reason to put it in. So I guess we'll open it up to if anybody has any burning questions or anything they wanted to talk about.
Yeah, thank you, Christina and Travis. So anybody online as well as in the room, do you have any questions?
This one comment, it is noon and we do have a board meeting that starts
Right.
at 12:15. What I might recommend is we're gonna have another meeting or two at, if there are some questions, maybe people could submit them to Travis in the interim.
Yeah, you can write those to us, or if we kind of want to collect them sort of a round table really quickly, and then we can prepare to be prepared for that Friday, send out of some of those answers to questions.
I appreciate that suggestion. Your question?
Sure. So with regards to the general fund forecast, the ending fund balance forecast on page 33, that we're looking at going from, 1.6 million this year, which I think the last year was more. And then about $200,000 deficit the next year, 300,000 the year after that, and 400,000 the year after that.
That's alarming.
Yeah, so the thought is what can be done to stabilize the budget in terms of lowering expenses or additional revenue? And what is the timeline to stabilize it so that we are not projecting deficits moving forward?
Okay. And any other questions? Go ahead, David.
I think I've asked this question before, and maybe it's just an ongoing question. We keep talking about the 2 grants that go to Oak Ridge and that kind of thing. Is there a finish line to Oak Ridge at some point?
Yes, so our first targeted airshed grant, November of this year, that one ends. Our second targeted airshed grant is next summer, but we're planning to ask and request for a 1-year budget extension to that. If so, then that will be the summer of 2027. And then the EJ government to government grant is a 3-year grant that also ending the summer of 2027 if we don't have federal changes that revoke that from us before then.
Great. And then 2 more is the partner dues. Are we getting any budgetary pushback on our partner dues increase? Christina, you said that that's a really important 3%. Just cognizant in my head, want to be really conscious about our customer service to that, making it worth it. And the third question would be, I would anticipate as we go forward, the asbestos inspections might be diminishing. Is that a reasonable expectation just because of?
I don't think so.
I mean, it could go both ways.
Yeah.
The construction lags and no, and.
It's been pretty steady for over the years, and there's just the requirements for how we deal with asbestos are either going to get more stringent or stay the same. They're never going to reduce, and so there will always be the existence of asbestos in our community. And anytime somebody is disturbing that asbestos, they really need to be getting a permit and following through with all the regulations. So if it diminishes over time, I'm thinking like maybe 20 years from now.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
I'm gonna ask that you try not to
Okay,
reply.
okay.
Go ahead.
I'll channel Mike Fleck here and say I think it'd be good to really dive into FERS and make sure we understand that. And the next one, I know it's a 2% increase, but if I'm looking on page 21, I see it going up from 147 to 195,000. So I think that'd just be worth spending a little bit of time at the next meeting to understand that increase. And
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Sounds good.
That was my question. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I have a few questions. I'll submit those, but I guess the one a couple I'm curious about on any concern with the funding from EPA, given that it's being jacked up and put a new engine in it, whatever.
Yeah, the short answer is for the next fiscal year, what the House is thinking about right now, the language that's in there is if it's EPA water quality, some cuts, but otherwise programs still looking the same.
Thank you. Okay. And then I guess two more. The FTE, I'm curious about, I'm wondering if you get staff here and then those grant funds go away, is there a difference between, I mean, you're going to get some folks trained with expertise, and then you're going to have to let some folks go or get some new funding or whatever. So I want you to be concerned with that area. I assume you are. And then, and I also have a question about PERS, and I'll submit that. And then you don't do an annual comprehensive financial report. I saw one in 22, but we're not doing one anymore. Is that accurate?
I would have to familiarize myself to what specifically you're referring to.
So
Okay.
maybe you can describe that better.
Say it again. It's
The annual, it used to be the comprehensive annual financial report, but apparently that was some
after
word
the
in
audit was
Africa that didn't
completed.
like.
Are you referring to once the audit was completed, then there was this report?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
I'm not sure, what happened before I got here, but we can absolutely do that. We are not finished with our most recent audit yet, so it wouldn't be ready yet.
Well, it's a huge endeavor. I'm not saying we should do, I'm just asking, if you were required to do that, so.
We haven't, during the budget law training we took, it was not mentioned that we needed to do that. We do I don't know if it's the same comprehensive one that you're talking about. We do an annual report that we make available on our website, but I don't know that it's the same thing you're talking about.
Thank you.
And anybody online, do you have questions? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Dylan, was that you?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had just a follow-up on that. Interested in seeing if there's new funding sources that you see in the future, since we'll be using those grants. And I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to close the meeting.
I move to adjourn budget meeting.
Second.
Okay, Steve? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Great, thank you so much. Meeting adjourned. Have a great.
Nice job, Sheriff.
Hey, nice presentation. Great slides. I don't know who does that, but you very creative.
Right.
I need to repeat that.
Yes, we reviewed it for everybody on.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, sorry. I'm calling to order the March 13th, 2025 meeting of the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency Board of Directors. Welcome, everybody. We're reconvening. We had an earlier meeting, a session to appoint a new member to the Budget Committee. And so we are now reconvening this board meeting. So first thing on the agenda is adjustments to the agenda. Does anyone have any changes or adjustments? Okay, seeing none, we'll use the agenda as published. I'd like now to invite any members of the public that are online or in the audience to comment on items on today's agenda. Is there anyone online today?
We just have staff online and no one is raising their hand.
Okay, and there's no members of the public here, so we will move on. I guess I'll ask also if there's any public comment on an item that's not on today's agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Item 7, comments from board members. Do any board members have any comments they'd like to share? Go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. I only had one item, which was I met with the MWMC, the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission, and they They like LRAPA. They're friendly to LRAPA. They were wondering if there's any way to look at their air quality permit because they're held to extremely high standards. If you've been over to their facility lately, it's extremely clean. It doesn't smell bad at all. It's almost zero in terms of their stink factor. But obviously there's other air quality considerations since they do produce natural gas from methane. Just wanted to put it on LRAPA's radar that intergovernmentally speaking, they would very much appreciate any additional support to perhaps lessen some of the administrative burden on their permit processing. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe Travis, maybe staff could respond to that. I know you don't.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'll say that the MWNC, we actually was part of our conversation this morning in our peer meeting. Because they have a permit renewal or activates coming up soon. So thanks, Alan, for that, and we will engage with them.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Dylan?
Yeah, I just wanted to voice my appreciation to staff and specifically Travis and Christina for an excellent first budget meeting, and also to all of staff for their work on the renovations and their flexibility while the office was closed. Just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody for rolling the punches and just have been so impressed with everyone on staff.
Thank you, Dylan. I think all the board members definitely concur in that, and it's gone extraordinarily smoothly. And Lance, I know you were kind of the point person on a lot of this, so thank you very much and helping deliver the renovation within almost exactly on estimated budget. So it's pretty remarkable these days. So
thank you.
Thank you.
We'll make sure that we send a note to the whole staff with your appreciation comments.
Any other comments from the board? Thank you. Next item will be approval of the minutes of the February 13th, 2025 meeting.
Chair, I move approval of the minutes for February 13th, 2025.
Second by Michael. Are there any comments, discussion on the draft minutes? Seeing none, been moved and seconded. I'll call for your question. All in favor of approving the February meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, they stand approved. Thank you. Next item is approval of the financial report and audit update.
Okie dokie. Well, let's start with the audit update because it's a bummer. But we did get originally, I think you'll remember me letting you know that we extended our due date on that to March 31st, which is swiftly coming upon us. And we are not finished with the audit, so it looks like we will miss that deadline. We spoke with the auditors about what are the consequences of missing that deadline, and it basically boils down to we're put on a naughty list and we get looked at a little bit closer next year on our audit, and we have to be off the naughty list to get for like 3 years before they stop being as what's the word? Scrutinizing, yes. We are already on the naughty list because we've missed recently before I started. So the effect is no change. So there's no financial penalty or anything for that. It's not ideal. We want to have already been finished with the audit, but because of the delays caused by staffing changes and then the change to our new software system and some hiccups that we experienced there, we just were not able to hit the target dates on the audit. So that's the only updates I have for you on the audit.
I would just elaborate really quickly, just a quick expression of appreciation to Christina and the context of Christina joined, and we had been flying without much of a financial manager in the organization for a little while. And so no longer items being juggled, it was items on the floor. And I think that those items have been picked up off the floor and are back in the juggling there again. So thank you, Christina, for bringing us there.
Thank you.
Any questions from anybody on the audit? I have one. I am just a comment. I'm hopeful that going forward that our processes and how we, with the new software and everything else, that we will not be in this position. I mean, I'm not saying the obvious, but we're getting almost close to the end of this fiscal
Right.
year and we don't even have audit results from the previous. So that's a little bit frustrating, I know,
Yeah.
for you, but also for the board, if I can speak for the board, that this is our, we have a very important fiduciary responsibility, and so having an audit report, I think is very important. So anyway, I hope that we don't, going forward, we're gonna have a repeat of this.
I appreciate that, Howard. I know that data is really important and helpful in the role that you all have, and providing that data to you in a timely manner is the goal for us. And our expectation for ourselves is that this time next year, we're not in the same situation as this year.
Yeah, I jokingly said just yesterday that, well, as soon as we finish this audit, it'll be time to start the next one. So, which I was joking, but it really is pretty true. So, yeah.
We'll all be fresh.
Yeah, the auditors will know me well by the end of both of them, right? So yeah, we do not anticipate the same issues next year at all, so. That's good. The next part is the financial report that's in your packet. It's through January 31st. We haven't closed February yet, that's why it's January 31st. It always lags just a little bit. The footnotes that I've included, some of them are the carry forward footnotes from previous updates, but I did add a couple. So the footnote number 1 is just talking about the indirect cost rate drawdown from grants will be transferred to the general fund periodically. We used to wait and do those all at the end of the year. Now we're doing them periodically for the grants. And so basically, if the grant fund is reimbursing us for overhead expenses, we're moving that portion of that expense, the revenue from that over into the general fund, which is typical, not new that we would do that, but new that we're doing it more frequently. And then number 2, same topic of grants. I know everyone knows that there is, the potential for funding freezes, and we've already had some funding freezes, and then they've been lifted and things like that. So we used to do our grant reimbursement drawdowns monthly and sometimes quarterly, depending on the volume. We are doing them right now every 2 weeks, because when we have the opportunity to do it, we need to do it instead of waiting and accumulating those expenses. The board advised us and gave us guidance last month that specifically on the EJ government to government grant, but we are applying it to all grants, that we would not exceed 25% of the total grant value in expenditures that we are needing to be reimbursed for. So we're not letting that accumulate that high. We've been keeping it well below 1% right now. So even if we only need to draw down $2,000, we're going ahead and doing it every 2 weeks just to stay on top of that. That way we're capturing payroll each time and things like that. And then the third footnote is talking about the capital outlay expenses. When you look at the percentage that we've spent so far this year, it seems a little bit elevated for where we are in progress of the year, but it's because we just finished this whole remodeling project. So it was expected that we would spend that line item early, but then we'll be done with it. We won't continue spending on it. So I put the footnote there so that you would not be as alarmed by the fact that we have spent more than the 67% that we hope to spend by this time this year. So the fourth one is talking about the special revenue fund. Materials and services are currently at 75% of the budgeted spending for the fiscal year. However, this line item is not expected to exceed the budgeted amount, as most of those expenses have already been incurred. So same kind of thing. When you look in the final column of the table, that's where it shows some yellow and red. The yellow means we're, they all say 67% because that's the goal. If you look at the end of January, that means 67% of the year has passed. So if the spending in the next to the last column is, 90% of what the goal is, I've highlighted it as red, as we need to pay attention to this area. And that's why anytime you see red, I'm going to put a footnote as to why there's red, so you'll know if it's something that should be worrisome or if it's expected and okay. Does anybody have any questions on this financial report? Yes.
I have a question, kind of a separate issue from grants being frozen or unfrozen. If we were to see a prolonged government shutdown, can you remind us, I think we've discussed this before, how LRAPA would handle that or how it would impact our ability to be reimbursed and draw down grants?
So the way that we draw down most of our grants is through an online system called ASAP. And it is my understanding that ASAP is still available even during a government shutdown because it's just an online tool. It doesn't require a staff member to do anything with it. But I have not experienced a shutdown while working at LRAPA, so I can't confirm that with 100% assurity. Plus, I can't confirm that with today's environment.
Sure.
But otherwise, if ASAP is not available for us to make those drawdowns, we would just have to hold and accumulate the amount that needs to be reimbursed to us. And when the government shutdown is over, then we would do the reimbursement. Right now, we're doing it every 2 weeks. If the government shut down and we don't have access to the funds, then we would have to wait till they reopen.
Okay. Thank you.
I can add to that. We have, with our targeted airship grants, had government shutdowns since we've had those. And I don't believe we've tried to do ASAP drawdowns during that government shutdown, but our concerns at the time back then with our grant administrators were that regardless of government funding and shutdown or otherwise, these grant dollars are still reserved and earmarked and accessible, and that will not have an impact on that. The one contingent or component to that was if the government is shut down for larger than a quarter at a time, then we may start to run into being able to access those dollars. And that was in 2023, I feel like, winter, fall of 2023, when we had those questions.
Okay, thank you.
But as far as the amount we would accumulate, it would be far less than 25% of the value of the grant for, probably 5 months. We don't spend at that high of a rate that we would get in trouble with that. So unless it was just a several months long shutdown, I don't think that it would affect us.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Mayor Cutchin's got his hand up.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, just for awareness, Travis, the city of Oak Ridge is a subrecipient for an EPA grant with resilience via the county. And we just got told today by Steve Adams that the portal was initially frozen and then it unfroze, and now it's unfrozen, but you can't submit any reimbursements. So that's where it sits with EPA. Thank you.
We'll talk about that in a future agenda item, Brian, but that aligns with our experience as well.
Okay. Any other questions? I just have a real quick one. Do you anticipate closing out the project remodel with the contractor fairly soon, or when do you project that to be completely finished and everybody reimbursed and all that?
We're getting close to that. We have kind of our final punch list, the engineering punch list meetings on Monday, I believe it is. Yeah, so do you have some elaboration there, Lan?
I mean, it would be nice if we could do that before the end of this month, but it'll definitely be before the end of the fiscal year, so.
Okay.
And that'll include any furnishings we purchase or anything. We'll be able to wrap that up before the end of the year.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Just entertain a motion to approve the financial update report.
Chair, I move that we approve the financial audit and update report for January 2025.
There a second?
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion? If not, raise your hand or say aye if you're in favor.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much, Christina, for that report. I guess you're still on. Next item is the federal grant status update.
So we talked a little bit about the federal grants already, but just to give you a little bit more of a update, you have a staff report in your packet on page 13 of the packet. So this summary tells you the full amount of the grant and the dates associated with it. on the second page of this report, it breaks down each one of the grants. So the one that we probably want to talk about the most is the EJ government grant. That's the only one that we've had so far that has been temporarily suspended and then reopened and then temporarily suspended again. We've gotten no notices of any terminations. We're still in communication with our grants officer at the EPA. She just emailed this morning about some correspondence and some questions that we've been discussing with them unrelated to the financial side. So she hasn't been laid off, even though she's working in the EJ space, and the EJ space is kind of what's under the most scrutiny right now from the White House. So we have no indication that they are going to terminate that grant yet, but they wouldn't tell us until they were ready to hand us the termination letter. But she's continuing to work with us on like a budget alignment change and things like that. So I feel like she's investing some time at the EPA on this grant. And I don't think that they would be doing that if they had planned on terminating it. So I feel I feel way more optimistic about it now than I did say a month ago, just because of the level of activity we're having with the EPA on the grant. Our current spent to date is 36,000. We still have 960 on that grant. What is accrued that we need to draw down on is only $1,000 right now, less than 0.1% of that grant. So we're keeping a real close eye on that. It is currently suspended in ASAP, that financial drawdown system that they have. So we're not able to do a drawdown right now. But when we spoke with our contact at the EPA, she was surprised it had been suspended. So she was glad that we let her know, and she felt like it would be reopened this week. So we're on Thursday. It was not reopened yesterday. I have not checked this morning. But because she was surprised that it was suspended, I feel hopeful that it will reopen soon. And then there's also an update here about Targeted Airship Grant 1 and 2, but those are less concerning. We just wanted to include them in the report. Does anyone have any questions about the grant fund?
I'll add really quickly that on tag 1 and tag 2, we have not seen any of those suspended, not suspended activity changes related to those grants. This has only been for the EJ government grant.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I just say that I appreciate this information, the awaiting federal reimbursement and as a percentage of the total grant will be helpful to have. So thanks for including that.
Hey, would you guys like to see this type of report each month?
I would.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Given the
current
situation, environment, and I'm very appreciative of that. We're invoicing the government and not incurring a lot of expenses with the possibility of delayed or maybe not even being reimbursed for some of those things.
Right.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, maybe this is the time to answer Mayor Cutchin's question too. I was in Washington DC last week with Commissioner Sennigan. We met with the Assistant Director of EPA, Andrew Hansen, about some of these resilient grants, 19.4, which is the one that he was describing for Lane County. And they are, like Christina has also mentioned, these are on hold, but I think they're on hold just because they just want to make sure. And they're just checking the boxes, making sure this isn't like, funding for alligator, cavity research in some Everglade County or whatever. So that he'd said that the best way to keep that viable was to keep calling and also doing small little invoices that you could invoice for to reactivate those. Mm-hmm. So that was his thing, but it's on our radar and it's on their radar. So to Mayor Cutchin's point, that 19.4 is on its way, Brian.
One more thought on the
I'm ready for it.
Oh, sorry. On the suspension versus being open and able to draw down on. Our contact at the EPA did say that one of the reasons she felt like our EJ grant was maybe not as not on the chopping block as much as some of the other EJ grants is that our grant really has tangible outcomes for families and homes in that area and a direct impact on the air quality. Some of the grants that they're really looking at, some of the ones that have already been terminated were really more abstract, conceptual type grants, and they didn't really have as many tangible outcomes. They were more like, we're going to talk to some people and figure some things out. So our grant is less likely to get cut because we have such strong tangible outcomes.
I'll add a tidbit too that our contacting EPR grant program and indicated that there have been 2 EPA grants in Region 10 that have been canceled and terminated. I believe, I can't speak for certain, but I'm also aware that there was a technical assistance grant with Endyda, ENYDA, that was canceled in Region 10 or terminated. So there have been some grants in Region 10 that have received cancellations.
Anyone have any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for that update. I think, this should be kind of a standing agenda item.
That's the plan for sure.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Mr. Daniels, you're up. So how much longer are you, I understand that you're,
Let me explain.
Okay. You
So
changed
we
your
met
mind.
February 25th and attempted to have an election and no one was willing to be nominated.
Oh.
So since then, I had some discussion with the vice chair and also a possible other vice chair candidate. So the current vice chair is currently under quite a bit of workload, but doesn't expect it to last more than 2-3 months. She's also a little uncertain about taking the reins. So what we discussed is to have the election in March with the vice chair and I being co-chairs, elect a new vice chair. I'll help her out through her busy time and then do a little coaching on how the chair works. And then I'll ride off into the sunset.
okay.
So there's that. And after that, we discussed the enforcement procedures for the agency and how public information might be enhanced regarding that. And we're going to pick that up next month as well.
Okay.
So that's it.
Okay. Any questions?
Chair, I'll elaborate a little bit too on the engagement with Jim and Kelly Wood, who's the vice chair, on what that looked like. Part of that is some reflections on the time commitment of joining the board meetings, as well as Jim over the years has been very diligent about participating, and a future potential is more LRAPA staff are just more prepared to, at the start of each CAC meeting, be prepared with an overview of what the board meeting took place, which traditionally Jim has been providing that overview from his presence. But if there are needs for staff to fill that support role instead, some agreeable to us helping to facilitate that work.
You'd still have a chair giving a committee report, but possibly requested it be near the top of the agenda and not stay for the entire meeting.
And I would offer, if there's anything that we as the board can do to maybe be a little bit more engaged, with the new chair and help her or maybe align expectations to what's possible from CAC's standpoint and what maybe we might want to expect, we can have that discussion. I know I'd like to be more engaged with the advisory committee, but I haven't. But so if that would be helpful, certainly offer that.
We'll keep that in mind. I feel pretty good about this potential path.
All right. Well, we appreciate, obviously all the years that you've served on the advisory committee, and especially appreciate you helping in the transition. And I think it's important to have a functioning advisory committee. Anyway, thank you very much. Okay. Next item, Travis, is authorization request for LRAPA public comment on Senate Bill 5520.
Yes, Peter Saxton, Commissioner Level, all members of the board. Brought to you here is a request before the board for LRAPA to attend an April 10th budget hearing before the Joint Ways and Means Natural Resource Subcommittee. They are receiving on April 7th through the 9th some presentation from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, walking through their services to Lane County and to request that Joint Ways and Means Natural Subcommittee to approve the governor's proposed budget. This impacts LRAPA because we receive pass-through funding that supports our programs and operations. We also provide technical support, or they provide to us technical support and resources that enhance our capabilities, particularly in the monitoring side of items. They do a lot of lab work for us, as well as we informally see ourselves, and I think DEQ would agree that we are a division within DEQ. We're very closely in step with them. We're on a lot of their internal meetings from an air regulatory perspective. And so the request is to attend the April 10th hearing and speak to LRAPA's stake in that proposed budget, making it known before the legislatures that who we are, the work that we do, and the support of DEQ's budget that supports us, and bringing that before the Joint Ways and Means Subcommittee. Something to make note as well is there's a House Bill 3107 that was put forward by Representative Levy and Lively, which is responding to an Oregon business and industry competitiveness agenda that had some, I think, some scrutiny of DEQ, but within that report, it had some strong positive things to say about the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency. Both of those members are on the Joint Ways and Means Committee. And so I think that that could be a strong opportunity for us to go and speak to our hope for their support in that. The governor's proposed budget at this point in time does not have any cuts to DEQ. DEQ has communicated that there is general fund cut to them of whatever percentage. LRAPA would have to in turn also either that similar cut. And so this is an opportunity in hopes to avoid that potential.
Any questions of Travis? So before us is request for authorization for Travis to participate at a legislative hearing. I appreciate Travis bringing this to the board. As some of you may know, a couple of years ago, it's a little bit of controversy of a previous director not getting input from the board on testifying on at the time was some pretty significant public policy changes, especially with regard to increases in Title V permit fees. And some board members, have some very, sincere concerns about the impact of the large increase. So, I appreciate you bringing this to us. So we have options of authorizing Travis to testify or not. And so I would, I guess, entertain a motion as to how the board would like to direct Travis with regard to this proposed legislation, SB 5520.
Then we go with option one. Do we need to read it word for word?
Yeah, for the record, you do. Yeah, for the record, you do, yeah.
I move to authorize the executive director to provide public comment in support of DEQ's 2025-2027 budget proposal SB 5520, specifically focusing on components that strengthen the air quality protection and support LRAPA's operations in Lane County.
Thank you, Jared.
Nice work.
I didn't even detect you taking a breath.
So that's scuba training.
Yeah, that's right. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a question. All in favor, either raise or say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. You have your marching orders.
I appreciate that. I
Wrote your marching order.
I see DEQ as a real important component of LRAPA being successful, and I appreciate the opportunity to advocate for our component of DEQ's budget in April.
Yeah, right, good work. Right. Thanks for bringing that up. And we'll, I think, expect the report and as to how that goes and, what the prospects are with HB 5520 passing.
Is there a time limit to your presentation?
Those are good questions.
3 minutes.
It's used 5.
But I know that my plan is to submit written testimony and then showing up in person for whatever that time allocated, concise testimony will be. I'm not sure what that is, but there will be written testimony provided.
Good plan.
Will you be on a panel, or you know yet, or?
I don't believe so. It's a public, kind of like a public hearing approach. I do have to sign up and register as someone who is going to speak. But that's, as far as my knowledge, has taken me so far.
Okay. Very good. All right, well, we'll look forward to hearing how it goes. All right. Wow. So maybe spend more time on the.
We did one yesterday, it was 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So I talk fast.
So when I was, when I worked on air, usually it was 2.5 to 3 was the amount of time I got, so I can.
Good training.
Start listening to old Micro Machine Man videos.
Alrighty, moving on, board goals, Travis.
Yes, Chair Saxon, Commissioner Love, all members of the board. This is a bringing before the board a proposal for some goals. A structure set more for myself so I can understand the board's intent and desires of LRAPA as an organization. I did hear from Brian Cutchin and Howard, there was a recommendation of engaging with this book called Balanced Scorecard, which is a way to consider for nonprofits and government organizations of how to rectify financial needs and mission-driven approaches. And that's broken down to, or at least the ideas there, into 4 general parts, which is customer stakeholder perspective, internal process perspective, learning and growth perspective, and a financial stewardship perspective. And in essence, each of these categories, you then break it down further into what are considered to be lag indicators and lead indicators. So lag indicators are items that objectively, here's the output, here's the things that we can write down of things that we have accomplished. And the lead indicators are items that if we work towards this and if we can demonstrate we have accomplished these things in a forward-looking perspective, those will have tangible impacts on our lag indicators. So this was an effort to provide more objective and accountable metrics for which the board can judge LRAPA's success and my success in leading this organization. So all of the content in terms of the initiatives that you see described below, the board has seen these items before in the goals that I have brought in the past. What is mostly new is the actual restructuring of the goals 1 through 4 or 6, excuse me, the 7. The blue boxes have the a general summation of what that goal is within the performance measures below it. Depending on the board's interest, I'm happy to go through each of these goals or can take a different approach depending on the preference of the board.
Maybe explain, this for people that aren't familiar with the balanced scorecard, what's meant by lead and lag indicators, and how that will help you prioritize and mistakes.
Yeah, I think that we could look at I think a good example to get a sense of this is goal number 7, which is the financial sustainability and transparency. So a lag indicator, like the first one there, reserve funds supporting an annual operating budget of a target of 4 months. So that is our objective. Here's what exists and is the sort of reality of LRAPA or the work that we're trying to do as a tangible, backward-looking or historical component of our efforts. And then the lead indicator, as an example, the audit completed before the state deadline of December 31st. So this is a forward-looking, future in time coming effort that if we're successful in achieving, that will have an impact on our lag indicators, which are the objective metrics that we use to rate or judge if we're hitting our goals or otherwise.
Any comments from the board?
You did a lot of work on this, Travis. I haven't looked at it and I would say like Jim for that.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Travis. And you developed an understanding of the balanced scorecard in a short time that took me 10 years to do. So I'm not surprised, but impressed. Thanks very much for putting this together.
Well, thank you, Howard. I just listened to it once and I don't think I've mastered it, but I think I'm understanding the theory, but still have more experience, I think, to gain.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions, Travis? So I guess our action on this, if we have an action, is that we approve or endorse these goals.
Yes, there's no approval that is necessary. There's no requirements legally or under the Clean Air Act that requires this effort with the board. This is more a request for me as the executive director to make sure that I have clear line of sight on the things that I need to be focused on and working at, and that the board is agreeable to those efforts. And so head nod.
So sort of any formal action, is there consensus that the board and Travis were kind of aligned on goals and the metrics and things? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
I think this provided much more insight into what you were thinking besides just trying to verbalize it the last time. So I think it worked out great.
And as kind of pointing to the discussion that we had earlier during the financial reflection, a lead indicator as an objective metric that can be judged this time next year is, did we meet our December 31st audit deadline or not? So yeah.
High on my priority.
Hardest goal.
Way to pass the buck.
We work on these things together. So.
Well, I think as Brian and others have said, this is definitely, I like the format, and a lot of clarity. I personally, this is my 5th year on the board, and I'd say in the last year and a half, I've observed tremendous progress in getting these processes in place and formalized, and not so much ad hoc way of managing organizations. So I think for these goals and things, I think it goes a long way to making the organization much more efficient and effective. I appreciate the work that you and Christina and everybody on staff have done with regards. I know that you got a lot of input from everybody on staff about these, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Cheers, here.
Okay. Moving on, some good stuff, more good stuff. Lance, do you want to talk about the remodel?
Sure.
Come on.
In honor of my 6th great grandfather, Lancelot, I'll sit at the round table.
This is the kids' table. I don't know.
Yeah, my night.
Makes me Arthur.
Right. Say about your wife. Okay, get back on track. So this is the last theory staff report about the remodel, and so everybody has that in their notes or in front of them, but I'll just kind of go through it, use it as an agenda, just go through the process. As Travis mentioned, a couple of years ago, we were looking at doing some changes, including carpet and paint and stuff, and realized that there was a lot of other major issues that needed to be taken care of. And so we approached the board, got permission to sign a contract with GMA Architecture and to look at doing a major remodel. We proceeded through that. I think initially there was the quote for the complete project was about $100,000 from the architect, and the board approved 35% of that, so we could kind of get an idea of whether it was even worth moving forward with, what the cost was going to be. And once we got that cost, we brought that back to the board, and the board did approve moving forward. And at that point, as has been mentioned before, Aerometrics was going through some changes, and so we were able to kind of leverage their funds to be the project funding point. We did look, as Travis mentioned, into maybe selling and buying another facility or leasing, but this was the most cost-effective, I think, thing to do, is to take a building that we already own and just remodel. So we moved forward with that approach. We did get an official bid, and the board approved that bid of the $1,099,000 from Proper Built. They were our contractor that was approved. We were able to stay pretty close to that bid cost. As mentioned before, we're currently 1.8% over that bid, about $20,000 plus. And I'm seeing any other major costs will come up. There's a few change orders still in the works, but they're all pretty minor. So we'll definitely stay under the 2%. course, along the way, there were some challenges. We ran into a roof leaking issue as we had everything tore back and could see where the leaks were. And we were able to have the roof taken care of under our building maintenance budget. So that cost is not part of this project. We used different funds for that. And we did have a major main leak that was just coincidence. A tree root finally punched through our main out there, and Sub let us know we were using way too much water. And so that was a few $1,000s to get that fixed, but that was taken care of. And then during the project, we were able to do some value engineering. That's a new term I learned during this project, some value engineering. We were able to save some costs here and there so that the increase in the overall cost didn't increase more than it did. So that's one of the reasons we were able to stay at that 1.8%. And we're still well under budget. You know, this does not include furnishings and stuff that will be coming. We're still using some of the old furniture here, but there'll be some new furnishings, kind of a combination of the old and the new.
And all the cubicles are under the furnishings.
Cubicles are under furnishings and stuff. So, so there is that extra cost, but we're still under the budget that was approved at 1.29 million. And then just some of those improvements that are listed in the staff report too. It's just like, you can see the meeting room is a real meeting room now instead of a converted break room. And, you know, we've updated the office layout. There's new HVAC. A lot of new electrical circuits have been put in. Some plumbing's been changed. And then, you know, the light efficiency, there's a lot of efficiency. It's all LED lighting. There's some of it is on green circuits where, you know, if it's too bright, if it's bright outside, it dims the lights, that kind of stuff. And so there'll be some efficiencies we'll gain over the next few years from the remodel too. There's still a few more things to button up. We're kind of using a hybrid version of our AV for the meeting today. You know, there's speakers in the ceiling and microphones in the ceiling that aren't quite working yet. So it'll be even a little nicer the next time we're meeting. But that's the one major kind of thing to button up is the AV installation and equipment in this room. So, and I'm personally excited to be at this end of the project and appreciate all the help we've gotten from staff, and Travis has been a great support, and our contractor was really good to work with, and that's been a big benefit too. So we're excited to utilize our new space and move forward.
I'll just chime in that I attended a lot of the meetings with Lance, and that was about a good chunk of my contribution to the project, and the majority of the weight is on Lance's shoulders. And so I think that it's important that we recognize where a lot of that effort in getting us to the point came from.
Job, Lance.
Thank you very much.
And you were doing that plus your
yeah, exactly. We put all that stuff back on there. We saved a lot of it. Oh, nice. That's our comfort.
You're doing that.
Yeah.
Hey, Lance.
Yes.
You were doing this, being the project manager of this as well as your day job. So
Yeah. I got a little pile of stuff I need to get back to.
Boxes.
Yeah.
like all those boxes.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of empty boxes to empty. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Lance, and everybody. It's a huge improvement. I mean, it's just quite the transformation. I think hopefully it's going to be a lot better place for staff to work. That's important, to have a nice place to work at. So, yes, sir.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'm just curious, are we tax exempt, property tax exempt as a governmental agency?
Yes.
We are, yeah. Well, I mean, there again, that just makes all kind of sense as to what financially and stability wise that LRAPA did by maintaining the asset they had and improving it, what you did. And then major problems that you got taken care of during the construction was HVAC and roof. Those are the things that can bite you in the bottom going forward. And now you have that financial security for a long time. So now all you got to do is build the culture, and everybody's going to be clamoring at your door to want to work here. So I think that was a very, 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 very wise financial move for you guys to do that. So I'm really proud of all those that worked on it, and thanks for all the team that did what they did, because that was one of the best financial moves you could have done in the short term and long term. So good job.
to piggyback what you just said, one example, we had prior to this remodel, we had a contract with the HVAC servicing company that we paid a pretty penny every month for because the cost to maintain it had gotten so high that it was actually better for us to do the monthly contract than it was every time something needed to be fixed. So anyways, we don't have that cost anymore. It's just gone now. So,
So our reserves will be robust next year, I can imagine.
Well, hopefully our electricity bill will go down.
Oh, it'll definitely.
substantially.
Oh, yeah.
He said they only dim when it's bright outside though. So it's not gonna be that.
July.
We're still in Oregon.
Yeah, it doesn't get used much, does it? Certainly not this spring. I think we're all ready for warmer weather. Okay, well, again, thank you, Lance. And, great job. All right, Travis, you're on. Director's report, please.
Yes, thank you. So for the director's report this month, I think something that's real notable to highlight out is kind of an expression of appreciation to Colleen Wagstaff in the back on the enforcement report. It's not reflected in the enforcement report that you've seen here before you, but we've collaborated and have gotten a lot of good work done to shorten the items that are pending or outstanding on that enforcement report. And in the next month, that should have a lot more resolution there. So thank you, Colleen, for that help, and I really appreciate us making progress on there. From an air quality perspective, this is the time of year where we can see some elevated PM due from wood stoves and home heating with see periods of air stagnation. Meteorologically speaking, we have not seen much of that air stagnation this far, and now that we're getting into kind of middle and end of March, likely to be out of that homeless heating season, and homeless heating season officially ends comes in May. On a kind of permitting ACDP or asbestos, excuse me, I should not jump ahead of that. That work continues. I'll say that from an internal operational standpoint, the last few months there's been a lot of focus on some presence of our inspectors and field staff being out across Lane County. So abatement contractors know that we're present and we're inspecting, we're saying hello to everybody. And I think that the abatement contractor community has heard our presence, and we are seeing some process improvements from the activities as well. On a permitting side of things, we are in a good place as far as backlog goes. We did have a posting for 2 permit writer positions that we have filled. One of those was an internal promotion for Amanda Atkins, who's a permit coordinator, and she has taken the role of permit writer, so we'll be backfilling that permit coordinating role. And then we're also bringing on a new permit writer who's regionally here, currently coming from the city of Springfield wastewater, but also has past experience regionally with MWMC and city of Eugene. So very excited about those new additions. And then moving forward, also have another operations position that we'll be looking to fill in future time. And perhaps with some of the EPA staff needing to look for places of opportunity or employment, that could be a place where we might be able to benefit and get someone really helpful to our work. And then on media interest, external coordination and outreach, this report comes from Matt Sorensen of all of the activities and efforts that we have done. I appreciate his detailed and thoroughness in putting this information out. Also on the public outreach side of things, we have been engaging, as an example, we just met with Bonnie with the Springfield Chamber earlier this week. And in our open house that we have planned for May, there will be a lot of outreach to the public as well as the regulated community for them to join us there. So I think LRAPA's logo, face, and services in time will continue to become more known by Lane County residents, and that will be an appreciative addition. And then the final thing from an operational perspective, this is really just more of a question for the board to gauge temperature here. We have historically, by routine as opposed to by necessity, LRAPA has brought handbook changes to our employee handbook to the board for their approval before any changes are needed. I engage with our legal representation on what is the requirement for that, and the response was, the board has the freedom to get in the weeds in whatever item they want to be in the weeds of, as an example, the board handbook. But this is a routine as opposed to a requirement. And so my question before the board is if that administratively can be something that LRAPA we handle, and then just changes to those type items we bring to the board as an informational update as opposed to a request for approval.
I would agree with that. I think the reason we went through it robustly the last time, because it was a major overhaul. There was a lot of stuff that you did on the last one. We went through and kind of helped move that in the right direction, right? Because you had a lot of different things in there. Little things, now we've got it set. It's kind of just marking up as you see necessary to improve what you need to improve. And I think it's nothing that we have to approve. It's in there.
And the intent would be to keep the board appraised of any of those changes.
100%.
And the culture's changed.
And we would still work with our legal counsel on any employment law that we reference in there to make sure we've got the language right.
Just a minute, Dylan. I just want to mention that Travis and I talked about this the other day, and he approached me about how we wanted to handle this, and I think Jared, what you said is exactly what my thought was, that the labor law and regulations and things like that are going to continually change, and they are what they are, and it's probably not going to really make any difference whether the board weighs in or not. It's just things that have to be done. But I did suggest to Travis that besides just keeping us apprised of any changes, that if there are any changes that have to be made that have a financial impact, that we definitely want to know about that. But just whatever minor tweaks and things like that has to be done. From my standpoint, it's not something I want to get involved in.
100%.
Because I'm not a employee handbook expert.
We've been in a room enough with council in the past years that we don't need to do it anytime soon. So
go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I was just gonna voice my support for it, and basically, in my understanding, of the board's role, we're really here to supervise Travis, and Travis's role and management's role in general is to set kind of policies for employees. So I think that having unilateral changes by management for the employee handbook makes total sense. And even with financial changes, I mean, I think the board's responsibilities for the budget, right? But then if Travis wants to make changes to financial policy kind of within that budget, I don't think that it should require like additional board oversight. I think that a notification is great, but beyond that, I don't really feel like the board needs to be voting on management decisions being made by the director for the rest of staff.
Thank you. Everybody agree with that? Consensus on that? Okay. Okay. So thank you.
And that's the conclusion of the director's report.
Are there any questions of Travis? Go ahead.
Hey, Travis, is it the expectation that I think you've mentioned before, the director's report format may change going forward as we've kind of set these goals? Is that kind of still the plan?
Yeah, so with the a lot of the information that's within the director's report, I think my attempt was to try to take that information and turn that into the lead and lag times. And those are the tangible metrics to how LRAPA is doing its work. So my approach is to take a swing at some revisions, the information to still be the same, but just present it in a way that hopefully connects more directly to the goals, so it can be seen that, okay, this is the goal, there's what we're working on, and here's some of those tangible metrics within it that demonstrate that we're still meeting these initiatives. So I don't have a clear line of sight of exactly what that looks like just yet in terms of revisions, but that's the attempt that I'm going to make to bring before the board in April.
Great, thank you.
Forward that. Okay, anything else on Travis? Well,
yes. One more thing. Travis, are you, and you've been doing a lot and have kind of had your head underwater for a lot of, especially with the renovation. Do you feel like you're kind of getting head above water a little bit and are able to have a little bit of work-life balance and maybe even take a day off here and there? I think it's kind of important that we as a board, as Travis is our employee, kind of keep a pulse on not working him to death, essentially.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. I would say that the most work-life out of balance that I had was probably January through June of last year, which was getting in at 7 a.m. and then there until I feel like I'm ready to go home for today. My own growth that's been helpful in finding that work-life balance is becoming more comfortable with delegating. I'm a personality type where I want to jump in and I will do the work, and if people see me working hard, then maybe they'll say, hey, let me help, and relying on them to just their initiative to take that, and becoming more comfortable with saying, actually, I need you to do that. becoming more comfortable with that new skill set of myself. I have still more to grow there, but having some of that comfort has allowed me to start delegating a bit more. And I am finding a lot more work-life balance for myself.
Okay.
Great question, Mike. Thanks. And it helps to have staff in place like, Matt and others.
Yes, I mean, the management team has been really helpful in that regard, but then also too, it's extends down to everybody else in the organization too. A lot of the work too that I'm focused on is kind of what you spoke to earlier, David, is the culture shift. I do want in time for LRAPA to really make sure that from a compensation perspective, we're as competitive as we can be, but there may be an upper limit to monetary compensation for that. But the other place where I think we could really fill in is what our work-life balance is here for everybody at the organization. And if it's a agreeable place to work, that you don't hate it, I think that goes a long way for a lot of people. Coming from a private sector background myself, I think that having a mission is really important and valuable, and finding people who are interested in doing the good work because we need it. And environmental protection, I think, speaks to a lot of people. So in time, we'll have, I think, some long-term employees like we currently do. And I think some of the staff in the building today may end up becoming future long-term employees 30 years from now. So.
Okay. Well, that concludes our agenda. Unless, is there anything else anybody? Well, then I guess we'll stand adjourned and get the Secretary Day back.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you.